The house on Grover Lane didn't look like it had a memory. The paint was fresh, a muted gray with black shutters that gave it that curated, haunted chic appeal. The lawn had been recently manicured, still bore the smell of mowed grass and cheap fertilizer. The for sale sign was gone by the time the Rosens arrived, replaced by a fake ceramic owl perched on the porch light. Marla Rosen stepped out first, her 3-year-old pressed against her hip, and took in the 2-story house with the exhausted optimism of someone desperate to believe in a fresh start. Tyler, her husband, followed with boxes and gritted teeth, pretending not to be overwhelmed by the financial leap they'd just taken. "It's got character," Marla said, mostly to convince herself. "It's got history," the realtor had whispered when she first showed it to them. That should have been the warning. Inside, the place smelled of pine cleaner and old dust. Sunlight filtered through gauzy curtains, illuminating little dust motes like ghosts trying to pass for something else. The wood floors creaked with every step, as if they hadn't been walked on in years, or had been walked on too much. Luna, their daughter, immediately took to the space. She dropped her stuffed fox and twirled in the living room like she was auditioning for a possession. Her giggle echoed just a hair too long. "Feels empty," Tyler muttered. "Yeah," Marla replied, staring at the living room's far wall. But not in a bad way. They didn't notice the slight discoloration in the hardwood. Didn't see how the boards had been hastily replaced, just in one corner of the room, covered with a rug the same color as dried blood. The previous owners were never mentioned. The neighbors never came out to greet them. And no one said a word about what happened in that house on a humid summer night 5 years ago, when the screams went unanswered, when the lights stayed on for 3 days before anyone called the police, when the front door was locked from the inside. Now a new family was moving in. The house exhaled, and something smiled beneath the floorboards. The realtor's smile had cracked a little when she handed over the keys. It was subtle, just a twitch at the corner of her mouth, like her skin knew something her words didn't. She didn't walk them through the house a second time, didn't mention the strange temperature dips in the hallway, or the way the backyard had a fence that led to nothing. Just handed them the keys like they were a dare. "You'll love it here," she'd said. "It's quiet." Now, 2 days in, Marla stood at the bottom of the staircase staring at the door beneath it. It was painted the same color as the walls, easy to miss unless you were looking. No handle, just a tiny brass keyhole shaped like an eye. She'd never noticed it before. "Tyler," she called, "did we check this one?" He looked up from the kitchen, already elbow deep in a drawer full of mismatched forks. "What?" "This door," she jiggled it, didn't move. "It's locked." He wiped his hands and came over, knelt down, looked it over. "Could be a crawl space, maybe it's sealed off." She shrugged, but it didn't feel sealed, it felt waiting. Later that night, Marla lay in bed, the baby monitor buzzing softly beside her. She stared at the ceiling fan spinning slow above them, trying to convince herself the sound she heard was pipes. Soft knocks, 4 of them, somewhere in the walls. She didn't wake Tyler. She didn't sleep. The next morning they found the doormat flipped over, not blown by wind, folded in half neatly like someone had done it with purpose. There were footprints on the porch, bare, mud trailing backward toward the house. Tyler called the realtor. "Hey, just wanted to ask, what's behind that little door under the stairs?" Her silence stretched for 3 full seconds. Then, "That room is sealed for your protection." "What does that mean?" But the line had already gone dead. Tyler stared at his phone. He hadn't told her what house he was calling about. The door under the stairs didn't just stay locked, it refused to open. Tyler tried every key they had, even the one that looked older than the others, the one with the brass loop and the tiny red stain that wouldn't scrub off. Nothing turned. "Storage," he muttered, trying to convince himself. Just a sealed storage room. But that didn't explain the sound. It started the 3rd night. Soft-eyed dragging. Not like something falling, like something crawling. Something that didn't belong under wood and insulation. Luna had begun sleep-talking. Marla had always joked that she was a quiet baby, until she wasn't. Now she whispered names in her sleep, words they didn't teach her. The baby monitor crackled with static. At first it was just white noise, but then, beneath the hum, something else. A low breath, like someone leaning close to the mic, breathing in, long and deep. "Is it broken?" Marla asked, trying not to sound shaken. Tyler unplugged it, replaced it, but even the new one hummed at night, even when Luna wasn't in the room. One morning, Marla came downstairs early. The house felt heavier somehow, like the air had thickened overnight. The kitchen smelled off, damp, like wet dirt and copper. And the door under the stairs? It was ajar, only by a sliver, just enough to see inside. She crouched, squinting into the gap. No light, no furniture, just a wall painted a sickly shade of green-gray. And on it a symbol, not spray paint, not crayon, something carved. She stood slowly, backing away. The door creaked shut on its own. Later that day, Tyler brought in a locksmith. The guy barely glanced at the door before muttering, "No lock I can work with." He didn't take payment, didn't even make it to his van, just stood on the curb and stared back at the house, mouthing something. Tyler watched him from the window. The locksmith was whispering one word over and over again, "Run." The first night the dragging got louder, Tyler stayed up to listen. He sat in the hallway, back against the cool drywall, staring at the sealed door under the stairs. The house was quiet at first, still in that breathless state between midnight and regret. Then the sound began.
Thud.
Scrape.
Thud.
It moved slowly, from the corner of the basement below, or whatever space existed under there, across the floor, like a body being pulled. He pressed his ear to the door. The wood felt warm. Not just from the heater either, a heat that pulsed, like a slow, invisible heartbeat behind the panels. Then came the whisper, right in his ear, through the crack. "I see you." Tyler shot back, scrambling to his feet, knocking over Luna's little step stool from the hallway. It clattered loud enough to wake Marla. "What the hell are you doing?" she hissed, emerging from the bedroom. I thought I heard something." He gestured at the door. "It was talking." Marla stared at it, then back at him. "Tyler, there's no one down there." He didn't answer. He didn't sleep. The next morning, Marla found something new in Luna's room. Scratches. 4 deep gouges along the inside of the closet door, like claws. Like something had tried to break out. But that closet didn't lock, and Luna didn't have anything in her room that sharp. The worst part? The marks weren't there the night before. Marla had folded laundry and put it away. She would have seen them. That afternoon, Tyler went to the hardware store and bought a heavy-duty padlock, bolted it onto the mystery door. "Until we figure out what's going on," he said. That night, Luna wouldn't sleep. She stood in her crib, eyes unfocused, pointing at the wall. "He's mad," she said softly. "Who is?" Marla asked. "The man you locked in the dark." Marla hadn't believed in nightmares until they started leaving marks. It began subtle, a tingling on her arm in the middle of the night like a spider crawling across her skin. She'd brush it away in her sleep. But then, in the morning, scratches. Not deep, just red. Tender, 4 lines like fingers. Always in the same place, right below her collarbone. The first time, she blamed Luna. Maybe the toddler had flailed in bed, lashed out with her little nails. But Luna had been asleep in her own crib. Marla had checked. Tyler tried to soothe her. "You're probably scratching yourself in your sleep." But Marla didn't have the nails for that. Not long enough, not sharp enough. The third morning, the scratches were on her legs. Too far apart for a child's hand, too deep. And that night, she felt it again. She woke at 2:44 a.m., heart pounding in the silence. Something had touched her, brushed her cheek, not like a bug, like fingers. Slow, cold, curious. She froze, too afraid to move. She listened, and she heard it. Breathing. Not Tyler's, not Luna's. This was heavier, wetter. Like someone who hadn't taken a real breath in years. It was coming from the closet. Marla turned her head inch by inch. The closet door was cracked, just enough to see darkness. She waited. Nothing. Then, in one fluid motion, she sat up and flipped on the bedside lamp. The closet door was wide open. Nothing inside. Except a single item sitting on the floor that hadn't been there before. A child's shoe. Old, dirty, laces shredded. She picked it up slowly, heart thudding in her throat. Inside, tucked into the sole, was a folded piece of yellowed paper. 5 words. Block letters. Written in what looked like dried ink or something darker. I miss how she screamed. The hallway changed on Thursday. Marla didn't notice it at first. Not really. She just felt off, like her legs had walked farther than usual to reach Luna's room, like the shadows hung longer against the walls. She paused mid-step, blinking at the space between the bathroom and the nursery. Had it always been that long? The floorboards creaked under her bare feet, not just from age but from tension. Like the wood resisted her steps. She shook it off, blaming stress, bad sleep, the crawling feeling that hadn't left her skin since the first scratch. But then she looked up. The window at the end of the hall, the one that overlooked the driveway, was gone. In its place was wall, seamless, painted over like it had never existed. She turned quickly, heart pounding. The shadows leaned. That night, Tyler was late getting home. Marla didn't mention the hallway. Just set the table, fed Luna, and tried to ignore the sound of whispers that seemed to come from the ceiling. It was only after dinner, when she was clearing plates, that she noticed the mirror by the entryway. Her reflection blinked a moment too late. She stared, breath caught. Then the lights flickered. Tyler came in 5 minutes later, groceries in hand, apologizing for traffic. He didn't notice the hallway, didn't notice the window was gone. Marla didn't tell him. Instead, she went to bed early, curled on her side with the lamp on, staring at the baby monitor. Static, always static. She turned the volume down. Then there it was again. That humming, though tuneless. A man's voice just under the white noise. And beneath it, barely audible, a second voice. Childlike, familiar, repeating the same word over and over. Backwards, backwards, backwards. Marla turned to Luna's crib. The child was sitting up, facing the wall, rocking slowly. She hadn't made a sound, but the humming kept going. From inside the monitor, and from inside the closet, Tyler wasn't a believer. He'd never bought into ghosts or demons or anything that couldn't be photographed or tax audited. But even he couldn't explain the photos. They were behind the crawl space panel in the laundry room. A loose board popped free when he was chasing down a rat that never showed itself. Behind it, in the dark cavity of dust and cobwebs, sat an old shoebox. It didn't belong there. He carried it into the kitchen, brushing off grime. Marla leaned over the sink, washing Luna's bib. Find a dead squirrel, she joked without turning around. No, he said, worse. Inside the box were Polaroids, dozens of them, curling at the edges, stained with time. They weren't of the house exactly, but of rooms that looked just like it. The same living room layout, same stair rail, same dent in the tile by the fridge, but the furniture was different, older, and the faces in the photos. Marla dried her hands, looked over his shoulder. The first photo showed a family of 4, mother, father, 2 girls smiling stiffly. Dated 1992. The next showed the same room, but the furniture overturned, the smiles gone. Then another, a girl crying, then just the wall blood-stained. Photo after photo. They weren't posed anymore, they were moments. Fleeting, grotesque, caught just before something terrible. And in one of the last ones, Tyler stared. The girl sitting on the floor, her face half in shadow. She looked like Marla. Not similar, not cousin close, identical. Same wide brown eyes, same sharp jaw, same chipped front tooth. Marla didn't breathe. I had a twin, she whispered, the memory surfacing like a bubble in tar. I thought she ran away when we were 5. She picked up the photo. In the corner, written in shaky marker, she cried too much. Tyler grabbed the last picture, now trembling. It was taken from the window, outside looking in, and standing in the reflection behind the glass was a man. Face blurred, but the shape of a key dangled from his hand. The timestamp on the bottom read, last night, 3:17 a.m. Tyler didn't sleep that night. Not after the photos, not after that timestamp. He sat by the front door, a baseball bat across his lap, eyes fixed on the stairs leading down to the basement door. The padlock was still in place, still latched, but it didn't help. Because now he knew something else. The house had windows facing the backyard, but the photo, the one with the man's reflection, was taken from inside the kitchen window, looking out. That meant the man wasn't on the lawn. He was already in the house. At exactly 3:17 a.m., the Ring camera chimed. Tyler shot up, heart in his throat. He unlocked his phone, fingers trembling. The alert showed, motion detected living room. He tapped the feed. The screen loaded. The living room was empty. But then something moved, barely, in the far corner behind the coat rack, a shape blacker than the shadows around it. Then it blinked, eyes watching, and the worst part, they were level with the camera, inside the room. Tyler didn't wake Marla. He didn't move, just sat back down and held the bat tighter. The next morning, he checked the ring footage again. The file was gone, deleted, no history, no timestamp, nothing. Marla found him scrolling through the app like a madman. "What's going on?" she asked. "There was someone," he said, "watching us." She didn't need more explanation. Because that morning, when she'd gone to wake Luna, the child's crib had been moved 2 feet to the left. No one had touched it, and beside it, lying neatly on the floor, was the stuffed fox Luna slept with. Its throat had been slit, stuffing pulled out and arranged in the shape of a smile. Above it, drawn directly onto the wall in crayon, in Luna's hand, or what looked like it, was a phrase, "Father is here." Marla didn't let Luna nap alone after that. She carried her from room to room like a charm against the dark, even as her arms ached and her mind frayed at the edges. The house was quieter now, but not in a peaceful way. More like a storm holding its breath. The baby monitor still hissed, still whispered. It wasn't every night. Sometimes when they left it unplugged, it still turned on. A green light blinking slowly, like a heartbeat. And when it whispered, it wasn't static anymore. It was a voice. Low, male, and it knew names. Marla woke once to it saying her full name, slowly, like it was tasting each syllable. Then it said Luna's, then someone else's, Eloise. She dropped the monitor, cracked it against the floor. Eloise, her sister, her twin, the one no one talked about, the one who vanished when they were 5. Everyone said she wandered off during a family camping trip, but no body was ever found. Now the house was saying her name. That same night, Luna started talking in her sleep, but it wasn't babble anymore. It was stories. "He's in the wall," she'd murmur. "He's tired, but he still wants more. He liked when she screamed. She had a red ribbon." Marla froze at that, because Eloise had worn a red ribbon the day she disappeared. She remembered her mother screaming, her father silent, remembered the trail of tiny footprints leading away from the campfire and stopping cold by the river. She shook herself back to the present, back to her daughter whispering like someone was feeding her lines. "Who told you that, Luna?" she asked, voice shaking. Luna smiled in her sleep. "The man in the walls." And just then, knock, 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 knock. 4 slow taps from the closet door. Luna giggled without opening her eyes. "He says you're next, Mommy." Tyler found the key on the kitchen counter. It hadn't been there the night before. He was sure of it. The surface had been wiped down. He remembered doing it himself. A late-night routine, scrubbing in silence while Marla lay motionless upstairs. Now it sat in the center like it had been placed there. Not dropped, not forgotten. Placed. It was old. Brass. Dull and heavy. A looped handle and a jagged cut that looked hand-filed. Something from before locksmiths were a thing you called, when people made their own doors, their own locks, their own monsters. He picked it up. It was warm, not from the sun, not from the room, from something else. He turned it over, noting the engraving along the side in crooked letters. Almost invisible, barely scratched into the metal. "One way in." Marla watched from across the room, arms folded. "Where'd it come from?" Tyler shook his head. "I didn't touch it." "Try it." He paused. "You want me to open that door now?" She nodded slowly, because she was tired of the whispers, because Luna had begun drawing pictures of the basement man with a black crayon they'd never bought. Because if this was where it started, then maybe it could end here too. Tyler approached the door under the stairs. The padlock still hung on it, unmoved. He fumbled for the keyhole he knew wasn't there the last time he checked. Now it was there. A small, round opening. He slid the key in. It turned without resistance. Click. The padlock dropped to the floor with a dull clunk. The door creaked open an inch. Darkness breathed out. And from inside, a smell drifted up. Stale air, wet concrete, and something else. Metal. Copper. Blood. Luna peeked around the corner. Tiny fingers wrapped around her stuffed fox. "Don't let him out," she whispered. But it was already too late. Something had been waiting behind that door. And now it was awake. The smell hit Marla first, not all at once. It crept up like steam rising from rot. The air thickened, each breath turning metallic, coated with something old and wet that clung to the back of her throat. She gagged. Tyler held the door open, his face pale, eyes locked on the black space beyond. The flashlight in his hand barely pierced the darkness. There were stairs, narrow concrete steps leading down into what had to be a basement, though they'd been told there wasn't one. Every house on the block had a crawl space, not this. This was deeper. They stood at the top for too long. Then Luna cried out from upstairs, a shrill sob that froze them both. Marla ran to her. Tyler went down alone. Each step groaned under his weight. The deeper he went, the colder it got. Unnaturally cold, like stepping into a meat locker. The flashlight flickered. Walls sweated moisture. Pipes hung like veins across the ceiling, some of them dripping red. At the bottom, he found the air vent. It was cracked open, jagged metal teeth around its rim. Something had been forced through it, or had clawed its way out. Tyler moved closer, crouching. He aimed the light down the vent, and there, teeth. Not human. A pile of them. Small, old, crumbling. Stained with something darker than time. He scrambled back, bile in his throat. A hum rose behind him. Low, male. Then a hiss of static. From inside the vent, Tyler spun, light shaking in his hand. Words formed in the air, not heard, felt. You open the door. He ran back up, breath ragged, slamming the basement door behind him. Locked it. Padlocked it. Wedged a chair beneath it. But still the air vents moaned. That night Marla woke to find the baby monitor glowing bright green, even though it was off, and from it came a sound she hadn't heard in years. Her twin sister's voice, whispering her name. The door to Luna's room was shut. Marla didn't remember closing it. She stood outside in the dim hallway, her palm pressed flat against the wood. It was cold. Not just cool, but fridge cold, like there was no heat inside the room at all. Luna, she called softly. No answer. She tried the handle, it didn't budge. Locked. From the inside. Her heart lurched. Tyler, she shouted, banging on the door. Tyler, it's locked! Footsteps thudded up the stairs behind her, fast and loud. Tyler skidded into view, gripping a screwdriver, but his face froze when he touched the knob. She doesn't even have a lock on this door, he whispered. Marla's voice cracked. She's in there. He wedged the screwdriver into the gap and twisted. Wood splintered. The door shuddered, resisting with something more than just weight. Something was holding it shut. Step back, he muttered. He threw his shoulder against it, once, twice. On the third hit, it flew open. The room was pitch black. The nightlight, always on, was shattered on the floor. And in the crib, Luna was fast asleep. Not crying, not moving, just breathing slowly, like nothing had happened. But there was something else. A figure in the corner, not a shadow, a shape, tall, thin, pressed into the space where closet met wall, unmoving. Tyler aimed the flashlight. Gone. The closet door swung open an inch as if to taunt them. Marla rushed to Luna, scooping her up, trembling. And on the wall above the crib, drawn in something dark and sticky, was a single handprint. Too large to be a child's, too long in the fingers. Tyler didn't speak. He just stared at the baby monitor on the floor, cracked open like a split skull. From its speaker came a voice. This time clear, male, calm. You should have let me sleep. The attic had been locked since move-in. Neither Marla nor Tyler remembered seeing a key. They'd never tried the door. Just assumed it was storage, maybe insulation access. Until tonight. Luna had stopped talking. Stopped crying. Just stared. Vacant, blank, at ceilings and corners like she was listening to something only she could hear. That was what finally pushed Marla upstairs. The house groaned as she climbed. The stairs to the attic weren't steep, but they felt long. Too long. Her steps echoed like she was ascending a tower. The door was shut tight, but there, resting on the top stair, was the brass key. The same one from the basement. Still warm. She didn't call Tyler. She didn't want to see what was behind that door with him. If it was real, she'd lie. If it wasn't, she'd bury it alone. The key slid in like it had been waiting. Click. The attic creaked open. Dust plumed into her face, dry and heavy, smelling like old fabric and rotten paper. She flicked on the overhead bulb. It buzzed. Faded yellow light spilled across the floor. The space was mostly empty. Boxes, a broken mirror, cobwebs drooping like curtains. And in the far corner, a mirror, different from the cracked one. This one was tall, ornate, clean. Its frame carved with twisting vines and what looked like eyes. It didn't reflect her. At first she thought it was broken, but as she stepped closer, it did show someone. Someone wearing her pajamas. Someone who looked like her. But that Marla was standing still, expressionless, covered in blood. And in the mirror behind that Marla, a man. Blurry, tall, his face smudged like static. A key looped on one finger. Marla turned around. No one there. She turned back to the mirror. Now the other Marla was smiling. Blood dripping from her mouth. And on the inside of the glass, letters scratched backwards. Visible only in reflection. Bring her back. Tyler didn't believe in ghosts, but he did believe in holes in drywall. The first note fell out when he yanked the coat rack away from the living room wall. Not out of curiosity, out of anger. The house had become unbearable. Luna wasn't speaking. Marla barely slept. And something had scratched his back in the shower. Something with nails. The note floated to the ground like a dead leaf. Folded yellow. He opened it with shaking fingers. She cried louder than the last one. He stared at it for a full minute, then yanked the painting down above the couch. More drywall. Then another note, tucked in the corner like a secret left behind. I still hear her. She whispers now. A third was under the hallway vent. I'm not done. Tyler's breath quickened. He ran his hand along the wall. Rough patches everywhere, like small repairs had been made. Patches barely big enough to cover a child's hand or the width of a mouth. Or maybe a message. He kicked in the panel beneath the staircase. Dust, fiberglass. And another note pinned with a rusty nail. She bled too fast, couldn't finish. He staggered back. Marla appeared behind him, pale, eyes sunken. You found them too, she whispered. He nodded. How many? Marla opened her fist. 5 more. All written in the same jagged hand. All cruel, personal, detailed. Memories etched into the skeleton of the house. And then Marla handed him the last one. It had no words. Just a drawing. 2 girls, identical, holding hands. One had her face crossed out with red crayon. And in the corner, drawn in what looked like dried blood, was a small key. Floating. Waiting. It was a dream, but not. Marla stood in the woods. Not outside. No trees. Just the feeling of woods. The cold, the silence, the slow breathing of something huge hiding just out of view. Luna wasn't in her arms anymore. Her hands were empty. The earth was soft beneath her bare feet. Wet. Every step made a sound like suction, like something didn't want to let her go. Ahead of her was a tent. Half-zipped. Familiar. A flicker of something old, half buried in her memory. Canvas fabric, blue plastic coolers, the sound of her mother crying while her father lit a cigarette. The family trip, the one where Eloise disappeared. But she was only 5. She shouldn't remember the details. And yet, Marla stepped inside. There was a child curled in the corner, not moving. Hair matted, shirt stained, feet caked with dirt. The child looked up. Her face was Marla's, but younger. Too young. Eloise. Not as she was when she vanished, but as she might have grown. Grown in the dark. Grown in the walls. Marla tried to speak, but her voice caught. Eloise crawled toward her slowly, mouth opening, revealing too many teeth. They lied, she whispered. You didn't fall asleep, you watched. Marla staggered back. The tent vanished. Now she was in the living room. The real one. Daylight streamed through the windows. But outside, the sky was pitch black. Tyler stood frozen in place, eyes rolled back, lips moving silently. And Luna sat on the couch, humming, the tune Marla had heard on the baby monitor, the same one Eloise used to sing. Marla turned toward the hallway. The floor stretched and twisted, doors multiplying, walls bending. At the end stood the man, tall, blurred, holding the key. He raised one finger, pressed it to his lips. Shh! Then Marla woke up, sweating, and found dirt under her fingernails. Tyler was gone, not in a he ran to the store kind of way. Gone. The bed beside Marla was cold when she woke up. His phone still sat on the nightstand. Wallet, too. No text, no note. Just absence. She searched the house in silence. The living room, kitchen, Luna's room. Everything felt wrong. The light outside was gray, smothered, like the sun had given up. She called his name. Once, twice. The house didn't answer. The only sound came from the baby monitor, faint, crackling static. When she pressed her ear close, she heard humming. Tyler's voice. Humming the tune, she screamed. Searched the monitor, flipped it open, checked for recordings. Nothing. Luna didn't react. She sat on the floor, scribbling with a red crayon, drawing spirals. Eyes too big. Faces without mouths. "Where's Daddy?" Marla asked. Luna didn't look up. He went down. Down where? Luna pointed at the floor. Marla's stomach dropped. She unlocked the basement door. The padlock was gone. The chair braced under the knob, pushed aside. And the air, cold again. Heavy, thick with the smell of sweat and metal. She took a flashlight and descended, her feet echoing into silence. At the bottom, everything was wrong. The walls looked soaked. The concrete pulsed like it was breathing. "Tyler," she called. No answer. She found his shoe near the back wall. Just one. And beside it, his wedding ring. Still warm. She turned toward the corner, and that's when she saw it. A figure crouched facing the wall, not moving. At first she thought it was Tyler. Same build, same shirt. Then it turned its head. Not like a person, like a puppet. Fast, stiff. Its face was a mirror. And in the reflection, Marla saw herself screaming. The lights began flickering on the 13th night. Every single bulb in the house. At 3:17 a.m. sharp, the power dipped. Not all the way out, just enough to feel unnatural. Enough to make shadows lurch and stretch like they were trying to climb out of the walls. Marla sat in the living room with Luna curled against her, a flashlight clutched in her hand, and the TV glowing static. No channels, no sound, just that buzzing, hissing snow. Then the voices started. Soft at first, barely there. Then layered. Dozens. Crying, pleading, repeating things she remembered from her own childhood. "Don't go in the tent. She's still down there." He took her eyes. Luna stirred, eyes still closed. "He's coming again," she whispered. Marla stiffened. Who? But she already knew. From behind the wall near the fireplace came the now familiar scraping. Long nails. Not on the surface, inside the drywall. Clawing. Pulling. And then a voice, wet and rasping. "Let me finish what I started." The living room light buzzed violently, then burst. Glass rained down. The air turned foul, thick with the coppery stench of old blood, like something had been soaking the carpet beneath their feet. Marla stood heart pounding and moved toward the wall. The sound stopped. A hum replaced it. Then a whisper so close it tickled her neck. "You owe me a scream." Luna wailed in her arms, finally waking, clawing at her mother's shoulder. "Don't let him take my mouth," she shrieked. Marla staggered back, sobbing. And just then, a loud, hollow bang came from the basement door, followed by the sound of something dragging itself up the stairs. One thud at a time, getting closer. Then silence. The handle began to turn. They didn't call the police until it was too late. Not out of fear, out of shame. What could they even say? Our house is whispering. The basement door opens by itself. Our daughter speaks with the voice of my dead sister. But when Tyler didn't come home for the second night, and Luna started refusing to speak at all, Marla cracked. She called, and for once someone listened. Detective Morris was quiet, grizzled, the kind of man who'd seen too many tragedies and stopped calling them strange. He didn't flinch when Marla told him about the basement, the mirror, the pictures in the walls. But his face changed when she mentioned a name. "Alan Probst," Marla said, her voice shaking. I think he lived here before. The notes, he signed one. That name." Morris didn't speak for a full 10 seconds. Then, "You don't know?" "Know what?" He looked away. "Alan Probst. Known alias, worked as a contractor. Specialized in basement remodels. Vanished in 1994 after a string of child disappearances in Illinois, Ohio, Indiana." Marla's stomach turned. "They never caught him," Morris continued. "But the houses he worked on? All had similar signs, locked rooms, notes in walls, bad wiring near bedrooms." He pulled out a worn manila folder. Inside, crime scene photos. Marla recognized one of the living rooms. Same archway, same baseboard molding. Only the furniture was covered in blood. She flipped further. Victims. Smiling kids, then not smiling. And then she froze. A black and white photo of a campsite. 2 little girls standing near a tent. One of them had a red ribbon. The other, Marla. There was a man in the background. Unfocused, face hidden in shadow. But the shape, the outline. He was holding a key. Morris leaned forward. He was never caught, he said. Some think he died, others say he kept moving, just kept hiding in walls. Marla couldn't breathe, because the next photo showed her childhood home, and on the back scribbled in pencil, 1 scream left. Marla didn't remember telling Luna anything about the past. Not about Eloise, not about the camping trip, not about the name Alan Probst. And yet, that night, as wind clawed at the windows and the shadows inched closer with every blink, Luna began humming again. Not her usual tune, this tune, the one that lived in the baby monitor, the one Marla remembered Eloise singing when they were little, soft and high, twirling with their dolls in the living room just hours before Eloise disappeared. Marla froze in the hallway. Luna sat on the floor, her stuffed fox in her lap, eyes glassy, voice barely more than breath. I liked the woods, she whispered. He said I could stay if I stopped crying. Marla dropped to her knees, grabbing her daughter's shoulders. Who told you that? Luna blinked slowly. He said I'm good at remembering. Who? The man behind the walls. The room chilled, the vents groaned. Marla stood, backing toward the door. And then Luna spoke again. This time, not in her voice. Lower, measured male. She was too loud, too soft, too slow, too sweet. Marla's hands trembled. Stop, please, stop talking like that. Luna tilted her head, eyes unfocused. But she liked it when he sang. She stopped crying when he opened her. The lamp in the corner buzzed, then burst. Light died. Darkness swallowed the room. Only Luna's silhouette remained, now standing, and from her mouth came a sound Marla hadn't heard in decades. A scream. Not Luna's, Eloise's. High, sharp, identical. Impossible. Marla staggered back, hit the wall. And in that moment she saw it, across the room behind the vent. A face, pressed flat behind the grate, grinning, eyes bulging, watching. Marla grabbed Luna and ran, not bothering to pack, not turning off lights, not even locking the door. They drove, miles, hours, until the static stopped, until Luna finally fell asleep. But before she did, she said one last thing almost dreamily. He says we'll come back when it's time to finish. The ground behind the house was always soft. Marla had noticed it on their first walk-through. How the grass dipped in places, how water pooled near the back fence even when it hadn't rained. But she'd chalked it up to bad drainage. Now she knew better. 3 days after fleeing, Tyler still hadn't returned. The police classified him as a voluntary missing adult. No signs of foul play. Just a man who walked out of his life. But Marla knew, and so did the dog. She'd left Luna with her sister for the afternoon and come back to the house alone. She had to see it again, touch the walls, face it. But when she arrived, the neighbor's mutt was already out there, barking, snarling at something by the back fence. It had dug a hole deep. Marla approached cautiously, breath catching in her throat. The dirt stank, worse than rot, like meat left in the sun, like something buried that never wanted to be found. And in the pit, a piece of cloth. Familiar. She knelt and tugged it free. Tyler's hoodie. The one he'd been wearing the night he disappeared. She fell back, trembling, and then her hand touched something else. Hard, smooth. A jawbone. Small human. Still smiling. Marla scrambled out, heart screaming, and fell to her knees. And from behind her came the faintest of sounds. Humming. Not from the house. From the hole. She looked down. The soil shifted. Something pale and thin began to rise. Fingers long and twitching. A hand. Then, a key dangling from its broken fingers. She ran. Again. But this time, she didn't make it to the car before she heard her name whispered from the treetops. Not in anger. In invitation. Come back, we're not finished. Wind down section begins. Section 21, the quiet before the howl. For the first time in weeks, Marla didn't dream. She lay in a motel room 3 towns away, the TV humming low with some infomercial for knives or vacuum bags. Luna slept beside her, finally breathing evenly, hand curled tight around her tattered fox. The walls didn't groan. The closet stayed empty, and the baby monitor was back in its box, packed and taped. Marla had thought the silence would feel like relief, but it didn't. It felt like the moment between lightning and thunder, like the breath before a scream. Still, she stayed, let herself breathe, made tea with a motel coffee maker, watched the sunrise pale behind a smudged curtain. Outside, life moved on. Cars passed, birds chirped. The world pretended not to know what she'd seen, and maybe that was the mercy. Marla stroked Luna's hair, soft and sleep-damp. The child whimpered once, then rolled over. She whispered something, too quiet to hear, and Marla didn't lean in. Didn't want to know. For now the world was still. The house was far away. And the key? She'd thrown it in the river. But sometimes, when the wind blew wrong, she swore she could hear it still turning. Somewhere. In a door. Waiting. The realtor never returned Marla's calls. Not after Tyler disappeared. Not after the police visit. Not after the news segment that quietly aired about the woman who lost everything in a haunted house she never should have bought. But someone did come back for the mirror. It arrived in the mail. No return address, no note. Just a box on the motel doorstep one afternoon, wrapped in linen, covered in dust. The mirror, the tall one from the attic. Marla stared at it for 10 long minutes before bringing it inside. She knew she should throw it away, smash it, bury it, burn it. But something made her unwrap it. She told herself it was closure. That if she could face her reflection again, if she could look into it and not see blood, maybe things would return to normal. She leaned it against the wall across from the motel bed. The frame was colder than she remembered, its carvings deeper, eyes still watching. She stepped in front of it, and there she was. Still her, but different, thinner, paler, eyes rimmed with shadows. But behind her, behind Mirror Marla, the motel room looked wrong. The walls were cracked. The light overhead flickered. Luna was gone, and in her place, a man. The same man, blurred face, black key dangling from a hook on his finger. He leaned forward in the reflection slowly, raised his hand, pressed one finger to the glass. Tap, tap, tap. The sound echoed behind her. Marla spun. Nothing. She turned back. Her reflection was smiling. Behind her, the door to the motel bathroom opened on its own. Inside the mirror, something stepped through. From the inside out. Tyler was back. At least that's what the door told her. It creaked open at 3:17 a.m. again, and his voice called softly from the dark motel hallway. Marla! She froze in bed, covers tight to her chest, Luna breathing softly beside her. Marla, it's me, I'm back. Sounded like him. The rhythm, the low, scratchy edge when he was tired. But it was too calm, too clean. She hadn't heard that version of his voice since before the house, since before the photos. She didn't answer. Marla, please. A pause. I need you to open the bathroom door. Her heart pounded. She hadn't told anyone about the bathroom. She slipped out of bed, slow and silent, and crept toward the narrow bathroom. The door was shut, but in the mirror, still propped against the far wall, she saw it was open. And inside stood a figure, just standing, watching. She picked up the mirror, slowly shaking, turned it slightly. In the room's reflection, the figure inside the bathroom stepped forward. But the real bathroom door never moved. She whispered, "Where did you go?" The voice answered from the hallway, "Nowhere, I've always been here." And then, from the mirror, "But I took the long way back." The bathroom door handle twitched. Marla ran forward and slammed it shut, throwing the bolt. Behind it, laughter, low, familiar. Tyler's, but folded in with something deeper, like a growl wrapped in a smile. The lights flickered. Luna stirred in bed. The mirror pulsed. A handprint appeared on the inside of the glass. Not hers, not his. Long fingers, palm too wide, skin too thin. Marla backed away, breath shallow, tears rising. From behind the glass, a whisper rose. "We all come back, you just took longer." She smashed the mirror. Glass flew, blood followed, and somewhere in the shard, someone whispered her name. One last time. Lovingly. Like a promise. There was footage, but Marla hadn't filmed it. Not consciously. It appeared one morning on her old phone. The one she hadn't powered on since before Tyler vanished. The battery had long since died, or so she thought. But today, it lit up. 1% charge, and a new file in her gallery. Donave Duans 3 was 17 last. Time stamped the night they fled. Her thumb hovered over it. She pressed play. The screen lit up with static, then resolved into a handheld shot. Shaky, grainy, like it had been recorded in pitch black with a trembling hand. She saw herself, sleeping, tangled in sheets on the motel bed. The camera zoomed in slowly, frame by frame. Marla didn't move. Behind her, Luna stirred, mumbling something. And then the camera panned across the room, toward the mirror, toward the bathroom. The door was open, and in its reflection, Tyler. But not quite. His face was stretched, his eyes sunk too deep, his smile too wide, like someone had drawn it on. He stood there, watching. The video's sound kicked in late. First, her own soft breathing. Then, "She's not done yet," spoken from behind the camera. By her voice. Marla dropped the phone. It hit the carpet with a flat thud, screen still glowing. She stepped back, nearly tripping. The camera had been recording from inside the room. From her hands. She didn't remember it. Didn't remember standing there. Didn't remember holding anything. But the reflection didn't lie. In the mirror, the camera held still in her grip. Her eyes were open. Her smile was soft. And her mouth moved in sync with the voice. "I want to remember how it ends." The screen went black. The phone died again. No charger could bring it back. Later that night, Luna asked her something. A question whispered from the dark. "Why did you help him?" Marla didn't answer. Because she didn't know. Not yet. Behind the motel drywall was a room that wasn't in the blueprint. Marla hadn't known until Luna pointed. Just stood in the corner of the room, facing the baseboard, whispering something too quiet to catch. Then slowly, she pressed her palm to the wall. A thud echoed back. Hollow. Marla tapped. The sound wasn't insulation, it was space. She pulled the dresser away, peeled back cheap paneling, and there it was. A seam. A warped rectangle carved into the wall, no handle, no hinges. Just a dent where fingers might go. She pressed. It clicked. The panel swung inward just a few inches. Air rushed out. Musty, humid, and sour with a sweetness that curdled the longer she breathed it in. Luna stood silently behind her. "Don't go in there," she whispered, but Marla already had. The room was no bigger than a closet, no light. She turned on her phone flashlight and shone it around. Shelves lined the walls, each one meticulously arranged with objects. Teeth, not loose, not tossed, placed. Each in its own tiny ceramic dish, like museum pieces. Below each, dates, names. Some in crayon, some etched into the plaster with shaky, desperate lines. One caught her eye. Eloise, July 1995. The dish was empty. A single note sat in its place, folded neatly, sharp corners. She opened it. She got away, but not far. Marla turned to run. The door swung shut. Complete darkness. Something breathed inches from her face. Then a whisper. "You brought her back, thank you." The light on her phone died, and in the black, tiny, cold fingers slipped into her hand. She screamed. The motel manager found her the next morning. Alone, collapsed by the broken dresser, her fingernails caked with drywall and dust. Luna was asleep in the bathtub, smiling, and every one of her baby teeth was gone. The headline didn't surprise Marla. Local mother questioned after motel incident. Child found unharmed. The article didn't mention the teeth, or the hidden room, or the fact that Marla hadn't been able to speak for 2 days after they found her. She could barely remember what she'd told the police. Just flashes, the dishes, the names, the whisper, "You brought her back." But what chilled her more than anything was the printout the officer accidentally left behind on the motel table. An old newspaper clipping from 1993. It showed a family of 3, young couple and their toddler daughter, standing outside a brick house. The new owners move into tragedy site, hope to rebuild. Marla stared at the faces. The woman's eyes were her own. The man's posture, Tyler, even the child. Luna? It wasn't them, not exactly. But it was. And the article continued. The couple, previously living in temporary housing after a fire, claimed to have no knowledge of the home's history. The house, located on Grover Lane, was the site of an infamous series of disappearances in the late 80s and early 90s. The former owner, Alan Probst, remains at large. Marla flipped the page. In the corner, scribbled in pen, "We all live here eventually." She tore it up, burned the pieces in the motel sink. But that night, when she woke from another dream of walls closing in and teeth rattling like rain, she turned to check on Luna and found her gone. The door wasn't open, the windows were locked, but there on the motel floor, a trail of tiny teeth, leading into the closet, which had never been that deep before. Marla stepped toward it, hands shaking, heart breaking. And inside, at the very back, a mirror, cracked, old, and in the reflection her daughter, smiling, standing next to a man with no face, holding her hand. The water wouldn't stop. Marla came to in the motel bathtub, clothes soaked, teeth chattering, arms wrapped around herself like a broken marionette. The faucet was running full blast, and the room reeked of rust and something else. Decay. She didn't remember climbing in. Didn't remember screaming, but her throat hurt, and under her fingernails, black grit, like soil soaked with oil. She stood on unsteady legs, dripping, gasping. Looked into the mirror. The crack ran straight through her face, and for a split second the reflection blinked after she did. She turned to the closet. Luna wasn't there, just the trail of teeth, still leading inward, into a crawl space that hadn't existed the day before. The air inside was thick, warm. It tasted like breath. She called her daughter's name. No answer. But as she stepped closer, her body wavered. Not with fear. With familiarity. She'd been here before. Not in this room, not in this town, but this feeling. Dirt beneath her feet. Walls too close. Darkness that watched. She pressed forward, crawled. The tunnel tightened. She scraped her elbows, felt blood trickling down her arms, heard things whisper behind the drywall. Words she didn't want to know. Memories she hadn't made. She brought me my first one. She told me where to hide them. She never cried, not really. The tunnel opened into a tiny chamber. A child's bedroom. Not Luna's, not hers. Eloise's. The red ribbon hung from a nail above the bed. And in the corner, a man sat, not blurry, not hidden. Real, face slack, pale, stretched like dough. Eyes open wide, clouded over. His hands moved slowly, shaping something in the dirt. He was building a little girl, piece by piece. Hair from the drain, teeth from the dish, eyes carved from mirror shards. When Marla gasped, he stopped, turned, and smiled. Almost done. She had always wondered if the neighbors knew. Back on Grover Lane, none of them ever waved. Not once. No cookies, no welcome notes, no small talk while mowing lawns. Now Marla understood. They knew. Every town has a house like that. A house with curtains always drawn. With children who don't stay long. With screams no one reports. She wasn't the first, and she wouldn't be the last. The motel clerk didn't look surprised when she ran barefoot into the lobby at dawn, soaked in bathwater and blood. He just stared, then slowly shook his head. "I told them not to rent that room anymore," he muttered. Room 17. She hadn't even picked it. The key was just waiting when she checked in. And the realtor, she was never real. Marla searched every office in town, every record. The name on the business card, no license, no digital footprint. The number disconnected. The face familiar, too familiar, because she'd seen her before, not in person, in photos. The Polaroid from the crawl space. The woman standing beside the original Alan Probst, smiling, pregnant, holding a child with eyes blacked out. Marla realized then, this was never about hauntings. It wasn't ghosts. It was inherited, passed down. Not blood, not soul. Every person who set foot in that house left a piece of themselves behind. Some left bones. Some left children. Some just left. Now it was her turn. Back in the motel, Luna slept, but not peacefully. She twitched under the blanket, lips moving like she was mouthing a prayer. Marla leaned close. The child whispered, barely audible, "She's inside you now." And from deep in her own chest, Marla heard a second heartbeat. Slower, hungrier. The motel mirror was gone. Just an empty space on the wall where it had once hung. No hooks, no dust outline, no shattered glass on the floor. Just a flat stretch of nothing. And yet, when Marla walked past it, she still cast a reflection. Only for a moment. Only when she wasn't looking directly. She knew what it meant. The final ritual had begun. She drove through the night, Luna asleep in the back seat, moonlight cutting through fog like a scalpel. She knew where to go, not because she remembered, because something inside her did. Her hands gripped the wheel, but it wasn't her mind guiding them. It was hers, Eloise, or what was left of her. The house appeared before dawn. Grover Lane, still standing. Caution tape, no boarded windows. Just a for sale sign, clean and new, sticking proudly in the yard. Like it hadn't devoured them. Like it was waiting. Marla stepped out, barefoot. Her clothes clung to her. Mud still crusted under her fingernails. She didn't knock, didn't use a key. The door opened. Of course it did. Inside, the house looked cleaner than before. New furniture, soft rugs, even flowers on the table. But the air was the same. Old stale. Expectant. She carried Luna down the hall. The basement door was open. No padlock. Just stairs gaping, yawning downward. The light bulb at the top flickered, then steadied. One by one they descended. At the bottom she saw the mirror. Whole again. Polished. Tall. Marla stood in front of it. Her reflection stood tall and straight, eyes blank, arms relaxed. And Luna's reflection wasn't Luna. It was Eloise. Red ribbon in her hair, blood on her teeth. The man stood behind them both now, one hand on each shoulder, holding the key, smiling. He whispered, "Now it's your turn." And Marla nodded. It was never the house. The house was just where it grew. Like mold, like rot, like a wound that never closed. Marla stood before the mirror, her daughter asleep in her arms, or not asleep, not really. Luna didn't stir, didn't speak. Her small hand twitched, curled around something invisible. A ribbon maybe, a bone. The reflection shifted. Behind Marla now, more figures, not just Tyler, not just Eloise. Others. Families, children. Faces half remembered from old photos in crawl spaces and burnt edges. All of them watching. And the man in the center. The architect. The collector. The first scream, the last whisper. Alan Probst. But names didn't matter anymore. He wasn't a man now, he was what they left behind. And Marla? She stepped forward, into the mirror, not through it, into it. The glass rippled, welcomed her. Because that's how it always ended. The final scream wasn't loud. It was a breath, a sigh, a child's whimper against her shoulder as the darkness folded in. And when the police broke down the door 2 days later, tipped off by a neighbor who finally spoke up, the house was empty. No blood, no bodies, just a mirror. Cracked down the center. Inside it, a single image frozen in glass. A woman holding her daughter, smiling. And if you looked long enough, really stared, you could see the key, turning slowly, waiting for the next hand to reach for it. Because the house isn't haunted, it's hungry. And it always leaves the door open for one more. Let the lights flicker, let the walls settle. Sweet dreams.